Right now, if your heating broke for one night, you'd panic. You'd reach for blankets. You'd check your phone for the nearest hotel. You'd survive, easily. Because survival was never really in question. Now imagine the heating never existed. No walls. No fire, some nights. No woven clothing, for most of your species' history. Just skin. Wind. And a temperature that could kill you in under an hour. That was winter for early humans. For over 1 million years before controlled fire became reliable. And hundreds of thousands of years before tailored clothing existed. Your ancestors faced a brutal cold. With almost nothing modern humans would call protection. And yet they survived. Not just survived. Spread across ice ages, glacial maximums, and some of the harshest climates the planet has ever produced. So how? The answer isn't one clever trick. It's a small stack. Strange adaptations, some biological, some social, some so simple you've probably never thought about them. Let's start with the body itself. Human skin looks like a poor defense against cold. No thick fur. No blubber layer like a seal. But researchers studying early hominins have long noted something curious: humans lost most of their body hair around 2 million years ago. Likely to cool down during long-distance hunting in hot climates. Not to survive cold. That means your ancestors' bodies were originally optimized for heat dissipation. Not heat retention. When ice ages hit, evolution didn't have time to regrow fur. So humans had to solve the cold problem a different way. Behaviorally, not biologically. This is where things get interesting. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has argued that control of fire may go back far earlier than most people assume. Possibly over 1 million years, fundamentally reshaping not just diet but survival in cold climates. Fire wasn't just warmth. It was a portable microclimate. A small circle of survivable temperature that could be carried, in principle, anywhere humans went. But fire alone doesn't explain everything. Fire needs fuel. Fuel runs out. Wind puts fires out. Rain puts fires out. So what happened on the nights the fire failed? This is where shelter enters the picture. And it's older and stranger than you might expect. Archaeological sites in places like Terra Amata in France show evidence of constructed shelters. Using branches and hides dating back hundreds of thousands of years. Not caves. Built structures. Early humans weren't just hiding from winter. They were engineering against it. And clothing, real tailored clothing. Maybe more recent than you'd guess. Researchers analyzing the genetic history of body lice, an insect that only lives in clothing, estimated that clothing became common roughly 170,000 years ago. Before that, if humans wore anything at all, it was likely draped, unfitted hides. Something closer to a blanket thrown over the shoulders than a coat. So picture this. For hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors faced ice age winters with fire that could fail. Shelters made of branches, and clothing that barely qualified as clothing. How does anyone survive that? Group behavior. This is the part almost nobody talks about. Cold isn't just a physics problem. It's a metabolic one. Your body burns enormous energy trying to stay warm. And a single human alone, exposed, undernourished, and shivering through a long winter night, has a real chance of simply not waking up. But humans didn't face winter alone. They faced it in tight, close-packed groups. Often sharing a single shelter, huddled directly against each other's bodies. This sounds primitive. It's actually a highly efficient thermal strategy. Multiple bodies in a small space create a shared microclimate, dramatically reducing heat loss per person compared to sleeping alone. Some researchers studying thermoregulation in early human groups have suggested that communal sleeping wasn't just social bonding. It was a literal survival technology, as essential as fire itself. And this reshapes how you should think about ancient social closeness. That instinct you have to want physical closeness with others. When you're cold, or scared, or overwhelmed. That's not just comfort. That's an inherited survival algorithm, refined over hundreds of thousands of winters, where the humans who slept apart were more likely to die. And the humans who slept close together were more likely to wake up the next morning. There's also a diet component researchers rarely connect to cold survival. Winter meant scarce plant food, which meant early humans, especially in northern latitudes, relied heavily on stored body fat and animal fat for calories. Anthropologist Leslie Aiello has written extensively about how energy-dense food sources, particularly fat and marrow, may have been critical not just for brain development but for surviving seasonal caloric shortages. Bone marrow, often overlooked by predators, became a crucial winter resource. Cracking open a bone for marrow wasn't a delicacy. It was often the difference between enough calories and not enough. Now here's the twist that changes how you should think about all of this. You'd assume the humans who survived best were the toughest individuals. The strongest, the most physically resilient. But the archaeological and anthropological record suggests something almost the opposite. Survival wasn't primarily about individual toughness. It was about cooperation infrastructure. Groups that shared shelter space, shared fire-tending duties, shared food stores, and enforced norms around resource sharing outcompete groups that didn't, even if those groups had physically stronger individuals. In other words, winter didn't just test bodies. It tested social systems. And the social systems that worked were the ones built around interdependence, not independence. This connects to something deeper about why humans, unlike most other primates, developed such intensely cooperative social structures in the first place. Cold climates may have acted as a selective pressure not just on biology, but on culture itself, rewarding groups that could organize labor, share resources fairly, and maintain trust across a long, dark, resource-scarce season. The people who couldn't cooperate, who hoarded, who fought over the fire, who refused to share the marrow, those groups were less likely to make it to spring. Think about what that means for you, right now. Every time you feel that pull toward the community during hard times. That instinct to check in on people. To share what you have. To want to be near others when things get difficult. You're feeling the echo of a selection pressure that ran for hundreds of thousands of years. Winter didn't just shape what your ancestors wore or built. It shaped who they trusted. And how tightly they bonded to survive. There's one more piece worth sitting with. Modern experimental research on cold exposure has shown that shivering thermogenesis, the involuntary muscle contractions your body produces in the cold, it is remarkably inefficient compared to behavioral solutions like clothing, shelter, and social warmth. Your body's built-in cold response was never meant to be the primary defense. It's a last resort, a stopgap while behavior and technology do the real work. Which means survival was never really about biological toughness at all. It was about how well a group could organize itself before the cold ever became a biological problem. So when you picture ancient humans facing a brutal ice age winter, don't picture a lone hunter gritting his teeth against the elements. Picture a huddled group. Close enough to share body heat. Tending a fire that might fail. Cracking bones for marrow. Trusting each other enough to share the last of the food stores. Betting their lives on cooperation over individual strength. That bet worked. It worked so well that it's still written to you. In the instinct to gather close when things get cold, or hard, or uncertain. You'd survive one broken night of heating without a second thought. Your ancestors survived thousands of them. Not because they were tougher than the cold, but because they were never really facing it alone.